Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Wednesday, and of course happy holidays as well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's get straight into the news, and let's start off with the Monday Night Raw rating, because of course everyone coming out of last week's episode of Monday Night Raw, the record low rating for Monday Night Raw last week, 1.5 million live viewers tuning in last week. Everyone was fascinated and interested to see what this week's rating would be for Monday Night Raw, and I think as most people expected, there was a bit of a bounce back for Monday Night Raw, especially coming off of the hot angle at the end of TLC. See what I did there? Hot angle with The Fiend and Randy Orton. So, Monday's live post-TLC edition of Monday Night Raw, featuring the fallout from Sunday's pay-per-view of a six-man holiday street fight main event, drew an average of 1.691 million live viewers on the USA Network. This is according to Showbuzz Daily. So essentially, let's round it up, call it 1.7 million live viewers. This is up around 11% from last week's 1.527 million live viewers for the TLC Go Home show. For this week's show, the first hour drew 1.841 million viewers. Last week's hour 1 was 1.627 million. The second hour drew 1.701 million viewers. Last week's hour 2 was 1.512 million. And the final hour drew 1.531 million viewers. Last week's third hour was 1.441 million. Raw ranked number 22 for the night on the viewership for cable. This is up from last week's number 31 spot. This week's Raw numbers are more in line with what the show had been doing previously, and of course they're up from last week's show, which drew a new all-time low in viewership for each hour, a new all-time low in total viewership, and a new all-time low in the key demographic. The show, though, is still down 7.85% from the same week last year. Now, as I mentioned, I think this was pretty much expected. Everyone thought that Raw was going to respond, and it did. I think coming out of TLC with a very hot angle with The Fiend and Randy Orton certainly helped that. So it's no great surprise that the rating went up for Monday Night Raw. I think if anyone's in WWE is celebrating it, then I think they absolutely need a reality check, quite frankly. If you're celebrating doing under 1.7 million live viewers for Monday Night Raw, what was previously the flagship show, it's not anymore. SmackDown is the flagship show. SmackDown is the A show in terms of content and ratings, but previously, you know, if you had 1.7 million live viewers, you would be horrified by that number, absolutely horrified. So if there are any people in WWE that are celebrating that number, high-fiving, saying, yes, back, response, look at that response, last week was just a blip, we've got nearly 1.7 million live viewers, then they absolutely need a reality check. Just because the number went up doesn't mean that the numbers are still good. It's still under 2 million live viewers. And again, I understand there are other circumstances at the moment. I understand it's the end of the year. I understand it's the holiday season. I understand there's the pandemic, etc, etc, etc. You can use all of those excuses that you want till the cows come home, but if you look at SmackDown, SmackDown's ratings are going up and holding steady. If you look at AEW Dynamite, Dynamite did go down, but they're still doing pre-pandemic numbers. There is no excuse for Raw. The issue with Raw is that it's a bad show. It's a bad show with bad content. It's 3 hours long. It's difficult to watch. The only thing raw about it is its name. There's nothing must-see. Raw is bored. That is the problem with Monday Night Raw. So yes, the number went up this week. In the grand scheme of things, is it great for Monday Night Raw? No. Still doing under 1.7 million live viewers is still not good. Still really is not good for Monday Night Raw. And will it be higher with the Legends Night that they do in a couple of weeks' time? Sure. But Monday Night Raw still has its problems. There will still be new record lows to come. It will get worse because unless they do drastic changes to that show in terms of changing the format, changing how they actually shoot TV, they produce TV, until they change the content, until they change a variety of things, it's not going to change anything about the ratings for Monday Night Raw. It will go up and down, but eventually it will go lower and lower and lower because that's what the trajectory is for this show. So great, they did better than last week. To be honest, I don't know how. I thought the show on Monday was unbelievably boring. I mean, if you did spend 3 hours live watching that, I really feel for you, because they're 3 hours you're not going to get back. There was only one good thing on that show that was actually worth watching, which was the Randy Orton Alexa Bliss segment. Apart from that, nothing was must-see. Not to say that it was bad. There was good matches, but there was nothing that wowed me, nothing that went, oh, I'm so glad I tuned in, because if I missed that, oh, I would have been so annoyed. It was a show that could have been easily watched in about 3 minutes in a highlight package the following day on YouTube, which I think a lot of people probably did. But more people watched it live than last week, so good for WWE if they're happy with those numbers. Let's move on to NXT because Trish Stratus, WWE Hall of Famer Trish Stratus, has revealed that she's had talks with WWE Performance Center head coach Matt Bloom about possibly working with WWE NXT in some capacity in the future. Now, Stratus recently appeared on the Women's Wrestling Talk podcast and was asked if she would consider becoming a producer for WWE in the future. Stratus said she would love to, but it would have to come with the price of being on the road while having her family still at home. She then revealed that she has had a few talks with Bloom about going to NXT to work with the developmental talents in some capacity. She said, quote, "I would love to. I love the idea of it. The reality is it comes with the road, right? And I just can't do the road because of my family at this point anyway. They're young now. I have a 3-year-old and Max just turned 7. So at this point, I just couldn't go back on the road like that and leave my family like that. But yeah, I'd love to contribute in some way. It was nice to go back a couple of times and just work with the girls and see how their mind works and telling the art of storytelling and just working with Fit Finlay again. It got me stimulated and him and I were just like, we're frit and frat. We literally have this little connection when we're working together and we would literally come up with ideas the more we would and we would be like, yeah, you just have to have that with someone. So we had that. So I thought, man, we could put some really good matches together. We could be like co-agenting probably. We would be awesome. But yeah, I would like to contribute in some way. Now regarding these talks that Stratus had with her former partner Bloom. Of course, she was a tag team partner with Matt Bloom, with Test and Albert back in the day. Trish said that the timing hasn't been right, but she would love to work with younger talents in WWE. She said, quote, "I've talked to Matt Bloom, my former partner, about possibly going to NXT. We've talked about it on a number of occasions. It's just like never the right time has come about to do that. But I'd love to work with young minds, and that was the best part about Tough Enough, was just to work with these kids and that sort of thing." So yeah, for sure. When it comes to Trish Stratus, I think the NXT, I think the biggest success of NXT, really since its inception, and I say its inception, not the the game that it was on Sci-Fi, not the game show that it was on Sci-Fi. When I really mean the inception of NXT, you know, at Full Sail, at the Performance Center, Triple H overseeing it all, the real big success for me of NXT has been the women's division. The women's stars that they've helped generate, they've helped blossom and produce. When you think of it, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Bayley. I know Asuka wasn't technically a homegrown star, but Bianca Belair. The names go on and on and on. The women's division has been the most successful thing, I think, to come out of NXT. Getting someone like Trish Stratus in to help produce and coach that is just, it's a win-win. Like with a lot of these WWE legends and Hall of Famers coming back, though, like they all say, it's just about time. The reason they've retired or got out of the business is because that being on the road was grueling. You've seen a lot of stars like Shawn Michaels. There have been talks about The Undertaker coming in to be a coach for NXT as well. That move up to Florida, and they're local to the Performance Center, and then it does feel like a 9-to-5 job for them, which is great because they have so much experience. I think Bret Hart made a great point about it before when he said these producers in WWE, look, they're ex-pro wrestlers and they're great. They're absolutely great. You can't criticize them. They do have a plethora of knowledge, but doesn't it make sense to have some of the biggest and best stars of all time in those producer roles? As Bret Hart said once before, why has he never been asked back? Now, I would assume that Bret Hart's never probably been asked back because maybe a temperament issue. He doesn't really care what he says to anyone. He doesn't care about their opinion, which personally I think that's the way it should be. Nevertheless, maybe he's not the corporate-friendly employee that WWE would want, but he raises a good point. Why wouldn't you want to have people like Bret Hart, Steve Austin, etc., The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels in those positions? Because they are the biggest stars of all time. They have the experience that you would want to know as a pro wrestler. So getting someone that was so successful like Trish Stratus back in an era where being a female wrestler, you know, wasn't about performing in the ring. It was about everything but that, essentially. Why wouldn't you have someone like Trish Stratus be involved? So it'd be a huge win for WWE if they could get her to be a coach or a producer for NXT in the future. Let's move on and talk about the WWE Thunderdome, because there's been a bit of a story, actually, about the WWE Thunderdome. It was recently covered by the Tampa Bay Times, and the reporter, Eduardo A. Aninka, spoke with WWE's Senior Vice President of Event and Technical Operations, Duncan Leslie, who noted that the WWE has a much larger footprint than usual with the Thunderdome setup. This is what he had to say. He said, "What's different is the scope and magnitude of the Thunderdome. We have a very large footprint when we tour, up to about 30 trucks, but this is much more complex because of the amount of video product that we display, that we use to display all the virtual fans, and the lighting and the projections and the lasers and the pyro. So it's a bigger footprint. It takes more technical horsepower." He also, John Sabor, WWE's Executive Vice President of Special Events, was also interviewed. He referred to WWE fans as their jet fuel and said the company can't wait to have them back soon in person. I'm sure they can't. It's more about the energy. It's not about the money, right? He said, quote, "Our fans are our jet fuel, and we can't wait to welcome them back in person, but the spectacle of the WWE Thunderdome and Tropicana Field allows us to continue to create an exciting, immersive, and interactive experience for the WWE Universe." It was noted that Leslie has a 150-man technical crew that he uses for every Raw and SmackDown and pay-per-view production in the Thunderdome. Sabor also talked about the changes due to the COVID-19 pandemic and said WWE is dedicated to delivering the best fan experience possible in the Thunderdome and improving on that experience every time they bring it live on air. This is what you have to say, quote, "This pandemic has taught the entire sports entertainment industry, has taught the entire world how to rethink, reshape, redeliver everything. And I have no doubt there will be a great number of best practices that are taken forward and applied to whatever the new normal is, whatever that is. Right now, we're dedicated to delivering the best fan experience possible with the Thunderdome and improving on that every single time we bring it to the air." So it's just an interesting thing that apparently it takes 150 people every time they go on the air for Raw and SmackDown and a pay-per-view to make this Thunderdome work. Frankly, you know, I can't criticize WWE in the sense that the Thunderdome is state of the art. It looks fantastic. It's definitely, most certainly, an upgrade from the WWE Performance Center. The shows do feel more like WWE shows. As I mentioned before, when it came to Tropicana Field, I was slightly disappointed as I felt we were going to get something much, much bigger and much more grander. I did think it was going to be the Thunderdome that we saw at the Amway Center times 10, and we just haven't seen that. It's just literally the Thunderdome that we had at the Amway Center, but it's in Tropicana Field. Apparently, I mean, you would never know. You would never know. So I just hoped that it was going to be something different, but unfortunately that's not the case. But it still looks fantastic, and you can't criticize WWE too much for that. Speaking of WWE and WWE Corporate, WWE has posted a job for a new lead writer on LinkedIn. Now, this was previously reported in November that WWE had posted a job listing for a lead writer position to work with the creative team. The company is apparently, though, still looking, as they posted the job this week on their official LinkedIn page. The job is based out of Stamford, Connecticut, as every job is for WWE and corporate. The position is labeled as an associate on the seniority level and includes functions such as production, writing, and creativity. Specifically, the lead writer position gives potential applicants the opportunity to, quote, "manage, mentor, and develop experienced writers/producers with a diverse creative background while simultaneously being accountable for compiling, editing, and developing weekly/long-term scripts, storylines, and character development." Long-term script. I just about laughed my behind off. A long-term script. Are you kidding me? Every single week for Raw or SmackDown, the script gets teared up. It might be a week-long script or a week-old script that they've been working on all week, but it gets ripped up and Vince McMahon writes it. Notes from VKM, rewrite everything. So the idea that this lead writer is going to be developing long-term scripts weekly is hilarious, quite frankly. It's absolutely hilarious. Now, here are some of the key responsibilities, shall we say, that are on here. I'm not going to read all of them because there are quite a few. But as I mentioned, this is a fun one. Compile, write, edit, and take ownership of the drafts of their respective shows weekly, including all promotions, graphic replays, and pop culture references. They love their pop culture references, WWE, don't they? Here's another one. Lead writing team discussions in brainstorming and laying out weekly episodes and long-term storylines. A long-term storyline, again, they love to say long-term storyline in this CV or in this job description, but it's just laughable. It's just laughable. Long-term, are you kidding me? Not a chance. Not an absolute chance that that's going to be the case. But I thought it was an interesting story nevertheless that they're still advertising for this. So apparently there are no takers. Maybe, just maybe, these big writers out there in Hollywood and in the entertainment industry aren't that keen on being a writer where they can work all week on a script, a promo, an angle, or whatever, and then see a man in his 70s who is crazy rip it up and say, write it all again about an hour before the show goes live on the air on network or cable television. Just maybe. That's just a thought there. Maybe that's the case there. I don't know. Maybe that's something to consider. Let's talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin, specifically a trademark dispute involving the word Stone Cold. Now, it was reported back in October that WWE were in a trademark dispute over the Stone Cold name with NFL player Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, HeelByNature.com is reporting that WWE is now currently negotiating a settlement over the trademark dispute with Stone Cold LLC, a company that headed Jones. The dispute is over Stone Cold Jones, a soda in conjunction with KC Soda. WWE believes it infringes on two trademarks they own, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Stone Cold. On December 15, WWE filed a motion to suspend the trademark proceedings with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. The proceedings will be suspended for 30 days to allow WWE and Stone Cold LLC to negotiate a settlement. If there's no word from either party, the proceedings will resume on January 15, 2021. Stone Cold LLC has responded to WWE's complaint indicating the name is widely recognizable, easy for me to say, by Jones. The company believes there is no confusion over the names and they should be able to use the Stone Cold name for the line of sodas. What I will give them a bit of advice to Stone Cold LLC, and like they're watching this, but if I could give any advice to them, I would say don't get into contract disputes, trademark disputes, or anything like that with WWE. They do this for fun. Vince McMahon says he hates lawyers and he hates litigation, but WWE lives and breathes by it. Their record in courts, whether it's criminal courts, trademark courts, contractual court, whatever court it is, their record is shockingly good. So I would not be surprised if WWE came out on top, but it's not to say that they haven't lost these things before, right? CM Punk, he did win his case against the WWE. The WWF won their long-standing dispute with WWE, so it's not unprecedented, but in fairness to WWE, I do think Stone Cold Jones, or the soda Stone Cold, does maybe infringe on Stone Cold Steve Austin and specifically the Stone Cold trademark. It does. I don't know. I'm not one to side with WWE over everything, but I mean, I see their point. I mean, how can you not see their point? Let's go to AEW and let's talk about the Young Bucks, because the Young Bucks have spoken about if they pay attention to the Wednesday Night Wars. Now, this is really interesting because on a recent episode of the Chris Van Vliet Show on YouTube, AEW Executive Vice Presidents, the Young Bucks, wanted to discuss the AEW and NXT ratings war. The Young Bucks admitted previously in other interviews that they don't pay attention to NXT. We don't watch NXT, we don't pay attention, we just focus on what AEW does. However, they have contradicted themselves here, because on the Chris Van Vliet Show, Matt Jackson noted that you have to pay attention to everything when it comes to the Wednesday Night War. He said, quote, "Our fans, I've learned, are very loyal to us, and no matter what is on, we still have a good base. And they're always going to watch this show now that we're a little over a year into it. But yeah, we definitely pay attention to everything. You have to pay attention to everything because everything is competition." Thank you. I mean, that is honest. That is absolutely honest. I praise Matt Jackson for that answer, because the idea, and I criticize WWE for this a lot because it is infuriating to hear them say this, because it's not true. We don't pay attention. We don't pay attention to what everyone else is doing. We just focus on ourselves. NXT, Triple H says it all the time. I just focus on NXT. I just book NXT. I don't counter program anything. I just book NXT. What a load of BS. That is not true. That is a lie. That is a lie. NXT is on Wednesday nights to take viewers away from Dynamite. That is its purpose. That is its job. That is its purpose on Wednesday nights, is to take viewers away from AEW Dynamite. NXT was announced to be going to the USA Network after AEW Dynamite was announced for Wednesday nights on TNT. Now, NXT stands and Triple H and WWE marks and all that kind of stuff, they'll say, wow, NXT was on Wednesdays first. Well, it was 1 hour on the WWE Network and it was taped. It wasn't 2 hours. It wasn't live. I don't even know if it was in the same time slot as it is now. That's not true. That is not true. And of course they pay attention. They've counter-programmed AEW Dynamite 1,000,000 times this year. Great American Bash, they do it all the time. They do it all the time. And AEW have done it back. They're doing it with the New Year's Bash. Suddenly it's over 2 nights, and it's one of the nights that NXT's doing their special in the new year. That's what you do. In these Wednesday night rating wars, they did it in the Monday night wars, you counter-program. I just hate it. I hate it. And it infuriates me when they try and play off and they lie and say, oh, we don't pay attention to what everyone else is doing. What a load of BS. That's just not true. That is just not true. Let's move on and let's talk about some praise that Jackson Riker has got from WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley, because WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley took to Twitter after Raw this week and had praise for Jackson Riker. As noted, this week's edition of Raw saw Riker win his main roster in-ring debut over Gran Metalik. This was Riker's 3rd appearance with Elias since they debuted together on Main Event a few weeks ago. Foley tweeted that it was good to see Riker, noting that he's a player in the business. This is what Foley had to say, quote, "Good to see Jackson Riker on Raw. I've known this hard-working, ass-kicking dude since 2009. He's a player." Now, Riker responded to this saying, quote, "Thank you, Mick, for this." Now, my opinion hasn't changed when it comes to Jackson Riker. I don't agree with his politics, and I felt that what he tweeted out back in the summer was bad timing. But I also don't change my opinion that it's very, very difficult, and I don't think, quite frankly, you can fire someone for their political beliefs. I don't agree with it. I don't support it. I really disagree with what Jackson Riker said and who he supports, but you can't fire someone for that. I think Mick Foley is trying to put a dampener on things, I would probably say, try and get everyone to move on. It looks like WWE and people backstage, I guess in WWE, are trying to move on and trying to give him a second chance. We'll have to wait and see if this actually pays out for him, but I think Foley probably worked with Riker when they were in TNA together back in sort of the late 2000s, I think probably, when he was Gunner, obviously, as part of the Immortal faction, I think he was. So interesting to see that Foley's put in some support behind Riker. I know that Foley definitely doesn't have the same political beliefs for him, so maybe we should all be like Mick Foley and put politics aside and just focus on pro wrestling. Wouldn't that be nice for a second? Let's also move on, talk about Drew McIntyre, because Drew McIntyre has revealed a scrapped WrestleMania 26 match with The Undertaker during his first run with the company. Now, this is on Stone Cold's Broken Skull Sessions. Definitely recommend to go watch this because it was a really great episode. But he also talked about that there was a plan for him to face The Undertaker at WrestleMania 26, but it never happened. This is what Drew McIntyre had to say. He said, quote, "I certainly wasn't ready for that opportunity at the time, but it was right after Mania that things started to go downhill personally. This is the time my mother got sick for the first time back home in Scotland, and she got a cancer diagnosis. It rocked my world as she was the most important person to me. I started acting out and drinking basically every night. Things started to go downhill professionally as well as personally, and it just was a vicious spiral that kept going every night. I was out and taking my mind off things, and it was directly affecting my work. My personal life was not good." Now, The Undertaker was Drew McIntyre's mentor at the time, but he didn't reveal to Taker all that was going on in his life and kept it inside. McIntyre said that if WWE knew what was going on, they would have probably sent him back home. But one piece of advice that The Undertaker gave McIntyre that did stick with him was to stop, quote, "playing the wrestler and be the wrestler." He said, quote, "It took a while before the light bulb turned on and I understood what he was talking about. I'm out there stressed and thinking about the next move. You can see it in my eyes that I'm not in the moment, and the crowd can see that this guy is not with us right now, so we're not going to be with him." Little lessons like that he was telling me, but he was like talking in riddles. One of the many lessons he taught me was just stand there and give it a second. Let it breathe. You don't have to rush to the next thing every 2 seconds. In my head, I'm going, more is more. But he was trying to explain to me, no, less is more. I've heard that a million times, but it took so long for me to apply it. Now, I remember hearing those rumours way back when. This is like 2010. I remember hearing those rumours that McIntyre was scheduled to face Undertaker at WrestleMania 26. This is at the time McIntyre was Intercontinental Champion. He was the chosen one. Mr. McMahon had anointed him, as it were. And obviously, we know the story. It didn't work out for him. Obviously, at WrestleMania 26, it was The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, Streak versus Korea. And yeah, it's always interesting to know what was meant to happen, or what could have been, or what should have been. But it's always interesting to see that, and it was interesting to know that McIntyre noted that in that interview. And like I said, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. That interview he did with Stone Cold, absolutely fascinating to watch and listen to. Let's talk about The Miz. Because The Miz, it looks like, is trying to get his Money in the Bank title shot reinstated. Now, of course, The Miz cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase at Sunday's WWE TLC pay-per-view during the TLC match for the WWE Championship, making it a triple threat match with AJ Styles and champion Drew McIntyre, who obviously went on to retain his title. But the cash-in saw John Morrison hand the briefcase over to the referee and not The Miz. Now, this was mentioned during this week's edition of Raw, with The Miz and Morrison insisting that the cash-in was not legal because it was Morrison who actually cashed in the title shot and not The Miz. WWE also did a backstage segment where The Miz was on the phone with someone important, presumably his lawyer, trying to get the decision reversed. This would presumably see the title shot be reinstated and the briefcase returned to The Miz. Now, this is fascinating because I didn't think about this at the time when it actually happened on the watch-along. You can see that when we did the watch-along Sunday. But I think The Miz is going to get his briefcase back, I think, here. And that is going to be interesting. I don't know how I feel about it yet. I think it works. My initial reaction is to it. I think it works. I think if he's a heel and he's a smarmy heel, look at the way he got the briefcase. He got the briefcase through legal loopholes, going to wrestler's court with JBL, suing Otis and all that stuff. It works. It works. And people complaining about The Miz cashing in unsuccessfully, I mean, it would be an interesting storyline if he does it a couple of times and manages to keep the briefcase. That's something we haven't really seen before with the Money in the Bank briefcase, so I'm not totally against it. I'm not totally against that. I think it works. I think it does work. So we'll have to watch this space when it comes to the Miz and the Money in the Bank. And finally, AJ Styles has revealed that he wants to face Triple H or the Undertaker. He did face the Undertaker, Triple H or Edge at WrestleMania 37 this year. In a recent interview with Alex McCarthy of TalkSport, AJ Styles made it clear that unless he gets a shot at Drew McIntyre or whoever is the WWE Champion at WrestleMania, he wants to face either Edge or Triple H in April. He said, quote, "If it can't be Drew McIntyre, give me Edge. If it can't be Edge, give me Triple H." But of course, a number of guys are willing to step up if it can't be those matches. Styles went into detail why he wants to face the Rated R Superstar or the Game at WrestleMania. He said, quote, "I want Edge because at the Royal Rumble, he separated my shoulder with a spear, so it's time to get some payback. With Triple H, I feel like I'm putting him in a situation similar to The Undertaker before every WrestleMania. Will he accept? I don't know." Now, the Raw Superstar spoke of his mindset, the mindset of Edge and Triple H and why they still stand out from their peers. He said, quote, "With these guys, I've always gone, wow, they're so great. Even while speaking to them, you realize that the mindset of how they approach things is totally different than a lot of other performers. There's a reason why they're still going and still doing what they're doing." Styles also praised Triple H for building a brand such as NXT. He said, quote, "NXT is a brand because of him. There's no question in that. I would love to see how it was going to work in a match. Will it ever happen? I don't know, but I'm trying to make it happen." Now, Edge versus AJ Styles, as I mentioned before, is one of the matches that I really wanted to see. As soon as you saw that Edge was returning, you wanted to have these dream matches against guys that previously he wasn't able to face. That was the big exciting thing about having Edge return, facing AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Bray Wyatt, etc. So obviously I want to see Edge versus AJ Styles. As far as Triple H, I think that could happen this year, you know. Triple H has kind of implied that he's maybe done. I don't subscribe to that. Triple H will have more matches in WWE, even if it's just one more and that's officially his retirement match. Then he can focus on NXT. I just don't see him retiring without any match and big fanfare. He's Triple H. He's part of the McMahon family. He's part of the fabric of WWE. He's going to have one more match. So if it was against AJ Styles at WrestleMania, I'm all for it. I love that idea. I think it would be a fascinating match and certainly would be a dream match. There's no doubt about that. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the news stories we presented today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling. So drop a comment, get involved with the community. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.